Apple Knocker Radio.
Hello friends, it's about 5 o'clock in the morning. I just spent the last hour contemplating my own death, and so I decided to make this video unshaven in my Higher Side Chats t-shirt. Shout out to Higher Side Chats, great channel. Sitting on the couch in my living room, not really worrying about lighting too much. I kind of mix this up because I don't know if this is disrespectful to viewers. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Really just the thought process was the reason why I've been contemplating my own death is because I was watching a Buddhist monk, and he was talking about how his morning routine, which I believe was the morning routine of his whole order, I think order might be the right word for it, his brand of Buddhist monkism, that they would start every day waking up and contemplating their own death. And so I figured I would add that to my morning routine this morning. It's definitely powerful. It's useful. You know, you sit there thinking. He said specifically early in the morning because it's before your thoughts about like your day and all of our little anxieties and what needs to be done before all the daily stuff floods in. You have this like moment where you have this sort of sleepy clarity in your mind, and so that's why he does it first thing in the morning. And I can say for this first morning that I did, it was definitely useful. Definitely, useful, also powerful in the sense that you're thinking about your own death. You think like, well, what do I want my life to be about? But most importantly, really, what do I want this day to be about? Because this is all that you have. And so I was just thinking, man, what do I love? I mean, beyond, I want to be as loving and giving a person as I can to my friends and family, and then what's left over beyond that is loving and giving for the world in general, right? But also exploring strange esoteric ideas, something I just love doing, really fires my passions, and sharing it with people is something that I absolutely love doing as well. And so just thinking this morning, I was like, I don't know, I think a fun way to do it would be just sitting on my couch, not worrying about how presentable I look, not worrying about the lighting so much, just sitting on my couch. But anyway, so here's the thing I've been thinking about lately. I've been thinking a lot about, so if any of you, there's an alchemy, right? A thing called alchemy, ancient esoteric art. What it's mainly known for today, like when people encounter alchemy, was that it was the precursor to modern chemistry. And people know purely the physical aspects of it, right? The turning all matter into gold, like turning lead into gold, right? That's supposed to be what the alchemists were about, and that is an aspect of it. Like alchemy was, it was like kind of an early form of chemistry. But to the true alchemists who are still practicing today, and to people like Carl Jung, this great psychologist who's studied and wrote about alchemy, it's as a spiritual and transformational art. And so when you're doing these, when you're doing an alchemical process, you're doing a physical process, but you're also doing a spiritual, personally transformative process, right? I mean, that's the part that people miss out a lot on, what it was really all about. Yes, you are working with the external world, but in the alchemical, esoteric worldview, which I believe stems from the Hermetic worldview, your consciousness and these external tools are married, right? And so by working on one, you're working on the other. If you do it with the right mindset, that's the whole thing. It's about intention. And so I was thinking about alchemical spagyrics, and when you make a spagyric, it's like the most basic form of alchemy, I guess would be the way to say it. And I'm not an alchemy expert, but I have been studying it for a while. Enough that I had an insight that I can't stop thinking about, because I think there's some real legitimacy to it and making sense of what's happening in the world right now. And so when you're making a basic spagyric, so you take an herb, and you're supposed to take the herb that represents the god of each day. There's a god that represents each day. And by god, I'm talking about the planets, the planetary rulers: Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Moon, Sun, Venus. And And so each there's an herb associated with each of those planetary energies, which can also be thought of as a god or like an archetypal form. And so what you do is on the planetary hour of that planet, and there's a lot of these details probably aren't that important to what I'm about to get at, but you take the herb, you crush it up in a mortar and a pestle, you smash up the herb. Some people do it with purely technological means, but the ways that I've studied it that seem to make the most sense to me, they advise doing this all by hand, because the whole thing is like mirroring your conscious intention with the work. And I think the perception is that there's a level of separation when you use just purely technological tools like a grinder and stuff like that. And so the way that the alchemists make a spagyric is they take the mortar and the pestle, they take the herb of the day. Say it's like Venus, go back to Venus, I believe that was lady's mantle. There is at least one of the herb, I think they have multiple herbs. They grind it up in the mortar and pestle, they grind it up until it's a powder. And then they pour alcohol over it, grain alcohol, like, as close to 100% alcohol as you can get. And then they wrap it up, protect it from light, put it in a dark, warm place, and let it sit there for certain amounts of time. There's like these stages of time. I think one of them is like an alchemical week, but I can't remember exactly what an alchemical week is right now. Maybe it was an alchemical month. Regardless, put it away, let it sit there, take it out, and then you filter out the, you pour it through a filter, and so it drains out, and you're left with the plant matter, and then you're left with the essence of the plant matter, the liquid. And so then you take the plant matter and you burn that plant matter, like you literally burn it, you set it on fire. And then you can see some videos on this. They go through like great lengths because they not only burn it, but then they put it in like they either put it in an oven or they put it on burners, and just keep burning and burning all of the like impurities out of it. I don't know if impurities is exactly the right way to say it, but you can keep taking it down until it's pure white and everything's been burned out of it. And now this is actually an interesting thing, because I think this might be mistakes in books that I've read. I'm not sure, because some of them don't specify this, but others do, and online and some videos I found this specification. Then at the end of this process, you would take the plant matter, which is now like ash, and not like it is ash. No, in some people, some of them even reduce it to this like crystalline form. You can reduce it even further to these like crystals, and then you add it back. Now the specifics of all that, this isn't supposed to be an alchemy tutorial video. I didn't sit down and write the stuff down and in order to do a step-by-step process on how to do spagyrics. My point is, I had this thought while I was looking at this process, because it seems to me that what the process of the spagyric essentially is you're taking the herb, the plant matter, and they reduce it into the salt and something else. They have words for it, salt and something else. These are words, they don't make sense to us when we look at them. They're not salt in the way that we think of as salt. But anyway, to my purposes, this idea that I want to share, it seems to me that what you're doing is you're taking a material, you are breaking it down to its basic components, you are then burning out the impurities, and you're separating it, right? So you're taking this matter, separating it into its essential components, burning the impurities out of that. It's one of the essential components, returning the essential components together. And so you have taken a body, cut it in half, burned out the impurities, and then returned it. So you are back to the material you started at, essentially, except that all of the impurities have been stripped out, right? That's really the essence of what I want to get here. It's not the specifics of making the spagyrics. It struck me that it seems to me that the essence of what you are doing is taking a material, breaking it in half, breaking it apart, burning out the impurities, then putting it back together again. So at the end, You have what you started with, but it's different because the impurities have been burned out. It's more pure, it's more powerful, it's more potent. And then I just started thinking about how I perceive the situation in the world that we are living in today, that we've been living in for the last few years. If you pay attention to the world outside of the United, I assume most of you following are from the United States, but I also know I have a lot of people from South Africa and Australia and now Finland. All of these things that are happening throughout the world, to my perception, there seems to be a consistent theme in it, which is that social structures throughout the world have become powerfully divided, right? Most people perceive this as left and right. Some people also then perceive it as the globalism versus nationalism. But however you look at it, and I really don't want or care to look at it in purely political terms, because I think what's happening is actually much more subtle than that, but it manifests in political terms that I'm sure when I just said that, all of you out there knew what I meant more than if I tried to do something, if I tried to speak about it in more abstract terms. The point is, and you can see that, this is written about all over the place. This isn't people write about just in regular mainstream news all the time about how things are divided. There's this divide. And, where there used to be sort of a middle ground and sort of the ability to compromise, there doesn't seem to be that anymore. You have these two sides, everybody's butting heads. And it goes beyond, I know I experience it with my friends and my family right now, right? And I've spoken to a lot of other people about the same thing happening in their lives. There is this divide, and things seem to have become separated in a way that they weren't before, to a degree that they weren't before. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, those divisions were always there, but things like social media just made the gap widen and made it more apparent. And that may be true, but it doesn't change the fact of the essential gist of things, which is that this divide has increased, right? And there's this separation, there's a battle going on. Now, I believe this schism happened in myself as well, particularly at the start of the pandemic. I'm not even close to the same person I was when the pandemic started. I've always been interested in spiritual type topics, philosophical ideas or whatever, but that accelerated tremendously at the start of the lockdowns. And I went through the whole dark night of the soul period and all those things. And I always try to, I really don't want this channel to become about me. So, but I think it's a useful thing to discuss for the general topic that I'm talking about. Because I've noticed that's happened in a lot of other people. I've seen it in people writing online, but I've also seen it in my friends and family. People have changed, even the ones who aren't aware of it, and the ones who would not agree with me and are not keyed in with the idea that something essential and serious, there was a serious change and transformation in the world. I believe that happened at the most fundamental, like metaphysical level, the level of consciousness. I believe there was a shift in consciousness. And so everyone's looking around, and we're all trying to make sense of this. I'm trying to make sense of it as well, just like everybody else. It's something I actually think about a lot. Sometimes, like everyone, I think a little frightened by it, a little uncertain. But mostly I try to look at it objectively and with curiosity, because it is fascinating. We are living in fascinating times when you can separate your uncertainties and fears. We really are living in fascinating, strange times. But it just occurred to me while I was contemplating spagyrics. I kind of feel like what is happening in the world right now is the alchemical process, right? Because like I said, with the alchemical process, you take this material, you split it in half, you burn out the impurities, and then you recombine it, right? Well, I feel like, in my perception of how things are happening, human civilization as a whole has become divided. And each side of this thing is going through their own sort of purification process, where they are facing aspects of their belief system. The extremes of both political polarities have come out, right? The extreme left and the extreme right are visible and active in a way that we haven't seen in a long time. And so I just started to think, it seems like a massive alchemical process. Things have become cut, and the human civilization has been cut in half, and impurities are being burned out, and it's a very painful process. It hurts all of us, and people are being lost along the way. Like the heat's too much for some people. Some people are breaking under the strain, and but everybody's being burned at least a little bit, right? But especially those who are, I suspect, like most of the people who are following this channel, the people who are keyed into such things and are paying attention to the subtler energies of our current times. And so I just started to think, and this is a hopeful thought to me, right? This is hopeful to me because if it is a alchemical process on a massive scale, then at the end there's going to be a recombination process, but the recombined form is not going to be what it was when it started. It's going to be the same, but with impurities burned out, and it's going to be different. It's going to have become transformed. And when I say this also, I'm fully aware of, I made a pointed effort not to discuss things like conspiracy theories on this channel for reasons I've gone to in the past. Number one, because I think it hooks you into an unhealthy egregore that doesn't serve you or serve anybody else and becomes a self-defeating and cannibalistic force. But also because the way that I see the world, and I see this with skepticism and humility. I'm not a fanatic. I'm not like, I look at things and I think, this seems to be how the world works to me. I think that the world is, number one, a lot stranger than materialists present it as. But I think it was kind of like what can be likened to a gigantic sea of consciousness, or I always like to use simulation hypothesis because I think it works intuitively with our modern minds. We live in this sea of binary information, and what we see is just what our interpreters have been keyed, our internal interpreters have been keyed to process from that binary information. But there's a lot more information than what we're seeing, right? Or you can see it like, most of the people who are into this kind of space like to just speak of it as consciousness, this sea of consciousness. Matter is sort of like a condensed consciousness. And so I believe that in this flow of binary information, or the sea of consciousness, however you want to see it, that there are larger algorithms that come into play, larger patterns and cycles, as well as consciousnesses of groups and disembodied inhuman consciousnesses that can affect human consciousness. There's a whole sea of consciousness, or a whole sea of binary information happening at all times. And so I've never particularly, well, not never, there was a time when I was into this, and it was an unhealthy time in my life. But now I really don't like the people that look at it as like, the Hegelian dialectic, and it's all these evil puppet masters making this stuff happen. I think it's so disempowering to think that way. It's so disempowering to think that there's just a group of people somewhere who are puppeteering all of this, and everybody else is just powerless. Maybe that's true, but I don't think so. Number one, for practical reasons. I think that's giving them way too much credit. But number two, I find it disempowering, and it creates kind of this hopeless situation because it makes you feel like you're just at the whim of other people, which to me isn't quite the same as being at the whim of the algorithms of this process this massive process happening in the universe at all times. I prefer to believe that it is going somewhere. There's a reason for this evolution, this change of human consciousness. Other of my guests that I've asked about this, who are people more esteemed in these alternative spheres, have disagreed with me, and I just disagree with them. I don't know what to say. I don't like the idea of a purposeless universe and things just meandering and crashing around for no reason. Like, I hear people say, well, the world's a sandbox. And these are coming from people that I respect greatly, and I still respect greatly. This is just one area that I disagree with them. This is all just a big sandbox, man. Like, that's kind of depressing, man. I'm not a kid. I don't want to spend my life in a sandbox. Like, play gets kind of old. So I prefer to think that it's going in. But anyway, I'm sorry about this. I'm getting off topic. My point is, I've been looking around at the world and thinking that it is one giant alchemical process. And no, I do not think that means that there are these superpowered alchemists up there engineering these things happening. There are people who are making the events in the world happen right now. But I prefer to think of them more as puppets of the true puppeteers. The true puppeteers are the algorithms and whoever made the algorithms. Or whatever made the algorithms. And so, yes, there are people who are manipulating certain events and putting certain things in motion. But I believe that they are tools to make the algorithmic outcomes move forward rather than being the conscious directors of it all. That is generally how I look at things. But anyway, I don't want to get too heavy into this because I'm not trying to be one of these wannabe guru types. I'm not a wannabe guru. I'm just somebody who's looking at the world, trying to figure out the world. I find it fascinating to think about these things and to churn over these little thought experiments and these little mental roller coasters. But this is one that I really think has some meat. Like, this is one that I was thinking about. I think, we're living through an alchemical process, man, and the purification process, burning all that stuff out. It hurts, The fire hurts. But fire also transforms. The transformation is painful. But it's necessary, It's just like those forests that need to burn because there's certain seeds that can only be, I don't know what the correct term is for it. They need fire, those cones, in order for them to open and let out the seeds and populate new forests. I think that's how the fine details of it go. But I know the big picture is that certain forests of certain species of trees need fire, and that all forests benefit from fire because they needed to get rid of all that undergrowth, which can kind of choke things and can create kind of dead forests in a way. Fire is part of the process of nature. It's how nature rejuvenates. And that doesn't mean it's pleasant. You think it's fun for the animals in the forest when the forest catches on fire? I don't think so, man. That probably sucks. I think we're living in a forest fire right now. And if everyone can just hold on. Now, that doesn't mean, I'm not saying be passive. There's a lot of things going on, like financially and stuff like that. And I think we should all take active roles if you want to help your family or help yourself financially. I'm not encouraging passivity. I'm certainly not a passive person. But what I'm saying is, I think we're living through a process, and if we hold on, there's going to be a recombination at the end. And I think it's going to be awesome because it's going to be all of the impurities burned out, and when we come back together, it's going to be all of the good stuff at a higher level of consciousness or a more advanced level of information in this continued journey of the human species and of planet Earth. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that. Thought it was interesting, and I hope everyone is doing well. I'm determined to have a fun and happy day today. Productive, hardworking, but happy and fun. As I've spent this morning thinking about my inevitable death. So, yeah, that's about it. Peace out, my friends. I truly hope you're all doing well.